zoax.net. Why he should have been a Christian. When asked what he would say to God if he met him after he died, Bertrand Russell replied, "I probably would ask, 'Sir, why did you not give me better evidence?'" In the early days of my atheism, I read Bertrand Russell, among other atheists. His most famous essay was entitled "Why I Am Not a Christian," and was written in 1927. It is comprised of short subsections that attack various topics of Christianity. After my conversion to Christianity, I looked back on this essay to see what I would make of it. Astonishingly, science has advanced substantially over the last century and now provides great clarity on the central points. The essay begins with a critique of three arguments for God's existence that have been advanced by the Catholic Church. Russell labels these the first cause argument, the natural law argument, and the argument from design. The first cause argument basically says that something that comes into being must have a cause. In this case, the thing that we are talking about is the universe. For Christians, of course, the cause of the existence of the universe is God, just as it says in the Bible. According to the Catholic theologians, God is eternal, and He created the universe, space, and time all together. God is outside time and not created. Therefore, God has no cause, but He is the cause behind the universe. In his essay, Bertrand Russell concludes his discussion of the first cause with this statement: "There is no reason to suppose that the world had a beginning at all. The idea that things must have a beginning is really due to the poverty of our imagination." Since Russell first penned this statement, science has advanced considerably, and we now know Russell's, quote, "poverty of imagination" as the well-established Big Bang theory. However, Russell wasn't the only person who was mistaken about the origin of the universe. When Russell wrote his essay in 1927, the prevailing idea was that the universe was static and existed in much the same state as it does today. In fact, physicist Albert Einstein's model of the universe employed what he called the cosmological constant to substantiate his belief that the universe remained in a constant state, and therefore had no beginning. Then in 1927, the very same year that Bertrand Russell wrote his essay, a Belgian physicist named Georges Lemaitre published a landmark paper that turned physics on its head with the proposition that the universe was expanding. The natural consequence of this is that it had a beginning. Unfortunately, since Lemaitre's publication was not widely read, his work remained unknown. He approached Einstein and explained his theory, but Einstein would have none of it. According to Lemaitre, Einstein told him, "Your calculations are correct, but your physics is atrocious." 2 years later, in 1929, Edwin Hubble published a paper on the apparent redshift that he observed, which indicated the universe was expanding. Einstein soon accepted the result and later declared his cosmological constant to be his greatest blunder. Still, much of the rest of the physics world remained unconvinced. Even the agnostic Edwin Hubble never fully believed his own results and held out the possibility that perhaps the universe was not expanding as his observations indicated. A physics battle raged, and the atheist physicist Fred Hoyle became one of the most outspoken antagonists of Lemaitre's theory. In fact, his attempt to mock the theory with the monosyllabic title Big Bang gave the theory its name. Almost 4 decades later, physicists Arno, Penzias, and Robert Wilson would lay the matter to rest once and for all with their discovery of cosmic microwave background radiation in 1964. Sadly, Fred Hoyle clung to his theory of the steady-state universe until his death in 2001. The story is fascinating, and the refutation of Bertrand Russell's point about the beginning of the universe seems to scream out divine intervention. Not only did Lemaitre publish his paper in the same year that Russell published his essay, but Georges Lemaitre was a Catholic priest. If Russell was holding out for more evidence of God before he died in 1970, I can scarcely imagine what would have convinced him. Not only were atheists and agnostics shown to be wrong in their theories of an eternal universe, The door has been slammed shut on finding out the cause of the beginning. The agnostic cosmologist Robert Jastrow described the situation this way. Consider the enormity of the problem. Science has proved that the universe exploded into being at a certain moment. It asks, what cause produced this effect? Who or what put the matter or energy into the universe? And science cannot answer these questions because, according to the astronomers, in the first moments of its existence, the universe was compressed to an extraordinary degree, and consumed by the heat of a fire beyond human imagination. The shock of that instant must have destroyed every particle of evidence that could have yielded a clue to the cause of the great explosion. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountain of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. Now let me continue with the second point. The second point discusses natural law. In this section, Russell goes off on a tangent and starts talking about gravitation, Newton, and Einstein. In this section, he simply seems to have no idea what natural law is. If you read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it says at point 1956, the natural law, present in the heart of each man, and established by reason, is universal in its precepts, and its authority extends to all men. So it has nothing to do with laws of gravitation, only humans. Natural law is the basis for most of our psychology, sociology, and philosophy. Without it, those areas of study would not exist, since there would be no universal precepts to discover. Moreover, the Catholic Church would never have succeeded in spreading across the entire globe without the universal recognition of natural law. Consider this. The Catholic Church currently extends over virtually every nation of the world, across countless languages and cultures, all unified by a central core of beliefs. This is a voluntary empire that simply could not exist without the common morality of God's natural law. 2,000 years ago, the Bible correctly predicted the future success of Christianity. In Mark 16, verse 15, we read, "And he said to them, Go ye into the whole world, and preach the gospel to every creature." In Matthew 16:18, Jesus declares how his church will be founded. "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it." Today, over 2,000 years later, the very heart of the Catholic Church, St. Peter's Basilica, stands on top of the tomb of St. Peter. The church, quite literally, is built on the Apostle Peter. These biblical passages foretell the founding, spread, and longevity of the Catholic Church. Yet, these predictions would have seemed absurd at the time of Christ's death, and during the subsequent waves of Roman persecutions. Nevertheless, the Church spans the globe today, across numerous countries, cultures, and languages, all thanks to the existence and universal understanding of natural law. This brings us to the third argument, the argument from design. The idea behind this argument is that God exists because the universe exhibits obvious signs of design. Hence, it must have a designer, namely God. Russell describes the argument this way. Everything in the world is made just so that we can manage to live in the world, and if the world was ever so little different, we could not manage to live in it. That is the argument from design. At the end of the paragraph, he concludes, there is no evidence of design about it. So Russell utterly dismissed this argument in 1927. However, today all scientists, even militant atheists, believe that the entire universe is designed in exactly the way that Russell described. In his book from 1988, A Brief History of Time, physicist Stephen Hawking states that, quote, "The laws of science as we know them at present contain many fundamental numbers, like the size of the electric charge of the electron and the ratio of the masses of the proton and the electron. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. For example, if the electric charge of the electron had been only slightly different, stars either would have been unable to burn hydrogen and helium, or else they would not have exploded. He continues, "It seems clear that there are relatively few ranges of values for the numbers that would allow the development of any form of intelligent life. Most sets of values would give rise to universes that, although they might be very beautiful, would contain no one able to wonder at that beauty." This is particularly noteworthy because Stephen Hawking is, among other things, a very militant atheist. Nor is this an aberration, but rather the current prevailing view of science. Moreover, the idea is so significant that Hawking made it the subject of his recent book, The Grand Design. To summarize the 3 points, the Big Bang tells us that the universe had a beginning. The universal adoption of common laws and religious morality tell us that natural law exists. Finally, modern science demonstrates the design of the universe via universal constants that are perfectly tuned to allow for life. These truths are acknowledged by atheists and Christians alike. In the years since Russell wrote his essay, science has demonstrated these truths of the Catholic Church's teaching with a great degree of certainty. Contrary to Bertrand Russell's assertion, God has given us ample evidence. There are other points in Russell's essay, but these 3 arguments are the core logical assertions. The remainder are of more emotional nature, which I may address in the future.